Clearly, the level of inequality that we have today is extreme, and it needs to be reduced. I describe it as an inequality crisis. Reducing inequality would actually increase the economic performance and make most citizens better off. So to me, there is a benefit from reducing inequality, and that's why I titled my book that I wrote a few years ago called The Price of Inequality, to say actually we're paying a very high price for the inequality that we have. Inequality hurts economic growth through many different channels. Children of poor families do not get adequate education, don't get adequate health care, and that means we're wasting some of our most valuable resource, our human resources. But we also have to have good systems of social protection. We have no provision for health care in the way that France has a good public health system. And that means an American who gets sick, who doesn't have much money, goes into bankruptcy. We sometimes, think about health as just a health matter, but it's also an economic matter and contributes very much to inequality. And countries like America with a high level of inequality, especially when money matters in politics as much as it does in the United States, do not invest in infrastructure, in technology and research, in all the things that are so important to make a productive economy and an economy with high growth. There are many roots of inequality that we have today. Exploitation of market power, exploitation of the powerful against the weak, corporations against poor individuals, the banks against ordinary individuals, many forms of exploitation in our society typically are by those at the top of people below. There's also an important inequality that arises from the intergenerational transmission of advantage and disadvantage. So if you have inequality in one generation, it gets passed on to the next generation and the generation after that. And that can be affected, for instance, by the quality of the public school system. In the United States, in recent decades, we have had more economic segregation. So the children of the wealthy and well-educated live in one place, and those in the poor and poorly educated live in another. And the schools in one are better than the schools in another. We have a local education. We don't have a national education system. And that perpetuates inequality. There's no magic bullet that you can address the inequality of the magnitude that we have. But there are three things I guess I would emphasize. First, change the rules of the game to make greater equality of market income. By that I mean more effective competition laws, more effective laws, fairer laws on bankruptcy, the way you conduct monetary policy to make it more concerned with employment than just inflation. So there are a whole set of issues that will lead to more equality of market income. We sometimes call that pre-distribution. Secondly, I think it's important to reduce the intergenerational transmission of advantage and disadvantage, which means that children who are born to poor parents have a better life prospect. One of the problems in the United States is that the life prospects of a young American are very dependent on the income and education of his parents, more so than in almost any other advanced country. And the third is tax and expenditure policy, progressive tax and expenditure policy. In the United States, for instance, the very richest pay a lower percentage of their income in taxes than the bottom 50%. We call that a regressive tax system. Warren Buffett, one of our richest Americans, pointed out that he was paying lower taxes than his secretary. And he said, that's wrong. The Scandinavian countries show up in the data as having the lowest level of inequality and the highest level of opportunity. In the North American continent, Canada does much better than the United States. I mention Canada because sometimes people say, well, Scandinavia is off there somewhere else in the world, very different. But Canada is very similar to the United States, and yet it achieves a much higher level of equality and equality of opportunity, which emphasizes this inequality is not the result of underlying economic laws, not the laws of nature, but the laws of man, our policies.